Ambassador of the Empire stood frozen in the observation chamber of the Galactic Council station. His four eyes blinked in sequence as he processed what the human delegation had just announced. The words echoed in his mind like thunder across an empty valley. President Maria will complete her term in 6 months. Her successor, Governor James, has already been selected through democratic election. The transition protocols are. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from 17 different species began speaking at once. Some wailed in distress. Others demanded emergency protocols. The ambassador actually fainted, his gelatinous body spreading across the floor like spilled water. Turned to his aide with absolute confusion painted across his scaled face. Did the humans just announce the death of their leader? Why are they so calm? Is this some form of bizarre human humor? His aide, equally disturbed, shook her head. No, Ambassador. They said she is completing her term. She appears to be in perfect health. She is simply leaving her position. Leaving voluntarily. That is impossible. No species surrenders power willingly. This was the fundamental truth that every civilized species in the galaxy understood. Leaders held power until death claimed them, until disease weakened them beyond function, or until rivals eliminated them through force. The Empire had experienced 47 civil wars in the past 1,000 years. Each one had started because a dying emperor refused to name a successor, or because multiple heirs fought for the throne. The people accepted this as the natural order of things. They operated under a similar system. Their grand consciousness would merge with a leader until that leader's biological death. Then the consciousness would fragment, causing decades of social collapse while a new leader emerged from the chaos. They had lost entire generations to these transition periods. They were perhaps the most extreme. Their warrior kings ruled until younger challengers killed them in ritual combat. Their history was written in the blood of their rulers, and their society existed in a permanent state of tension as ambitious generals waited for moments of weakness. Every species had evolved some version of this brutal reality. Power was held until it was taken. Leadership ended only with death. Succession was a violent, unpredictable process that often destroyed civilizations. And yet the humans stood before the Galactic Council, calmly explaining that their supreme leader would simply walk away from power at a predetermined time, hand authority to a chosen successor, and continue living as a private citizen. High Counselor, the ancient who led the council sessions, finally restored order to the chamber. His weathered face showed the scars of 3 succession challenges he had survived. "Human ambassador," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Please explain this concept you call succession planning. Are you telling us that President will surrender her authority while still alive and capable?" Ambassador David Park, the human representative, smiled with the patience of someone who had explained this many times before. "Yes, High Counselor. President was elected to a 4-year term 8 years ago. She was re-elected once, which is the maximum allowed under our Constitution. In 6 months, her second term ends, and she will transfer power to President-elect in a ceremony we call inauguration. And she agreed to this limitation when she first sought power. She did. Every human leader understands these limitations before they take office. The rules exist before the individual, and the individual must accept the rules." Counselor stepped forward, his confusion transforming into fascination. "But Ambassador Park, what prevents President from simply refusing to leave? She commands your military forces. She controls your governmental systems. Why would she surrender such power?" Park's expression shifted to something the alien struggled to interpret. Later, council historians would identify it as pride mixed with amusement. "She would never refuse," Park said. "The thought would not occur to her. Our civilization is built on the principle that power belongs to the people and is only temporarily loaned to leaders. President serves us. We do not serve her." The chamber fell silent again. This concept was so foreign to the assembled species that many simply could not process it. Ambassador Park continued. Perhaps I should explain how this evolved. Thousands of years ago, humans suffered under rulers who held power until death, just like many of your civilizations. We experienced the chaos of uncertain successions, the civil wars, the assassinations, the collapse of institutions when a strong ruler died without clear plans. He paused, letting the translator systems carry his words to every representative. Our ancestors grew tired of this cycle. They began experimenting with different systems. Some failed spectacularly. Others showed promise. Over centuries, we refined our approach. We created constitutions, written documents that establish rules for governance that exist beyond any individual leader. We developed electoral systems that allow peaceful transfer of power based on the will of the citizens. We built institutions that continue functioning regardless of who holds specific offices. The ambassador had recovered enough to raise a tentacle. But surely, ambitious individuals resist such constraints. How do you prevent powerful humans from seizing permanent control? Our institutions prevent it, Park explained. We separate power into multiple branches that check each other. No single individual can control everything. Our military swears loyalty to the Constitution, not to any person. Our courts can remove leaders who violate the rules. Our free press exposes corruption and abuse. Most importantly, our citizens expect and demand these standards. High Counselor leaned forward with intense interest. You mentioned that President will live as a private citizen afterward. Is she not afraid of her successor seeking revenge? In tradition, a defeated leader would face execution to prevent them from plotting a return to power. Park shook his head. Former presidents in our society are respected figures. They often continue serving in other capacities, advising current leaders, writing about their experiences, teaching at universities. President has announced she plans to establish a foundation focused on environmental conservation. Her successor will likely seek her advice on many matters. And previous presidents have done this successfully. They have surrendered power and lived peacefully afterward. For over 200 years in our current system, we have had 46 peaceful transitions of power. Some of our greatest leaders left office and lived productive lives for decades afterward. George Washington, our first president under the current Constitution, voluntarily refused to serve more than 2 terms despite overwhelming popular support. He believed that peaceful transition was more important than any individual's continued rule. This statement caused another wave of murmuring through the chamber. The idea of a popular leader voluntarily limiting their own power was almost incomprehensible to species that had never seen such behavior. Counselor spoke again, his voice now carrying a tone of wonder rather than confusion. Ambassador Park, my people have lost billions of lives to succession conflicts over our history. Our greatest civilizations have collapsed when strong emperors died without clear heirs. The people live in constant fear of the next transition crisis. Are you telling us that humans have solved this problem? We have found one solution, Park said carefully. It is not perfect. We still have political conflicts, disagreements, and occasional challenges. But we have eliminated the violent collapse that accompanies leadership changes. Our civilization continues advancing through each transition because our institutions remain stable even as the individuals change. The High Counselor rose from his seat, his ancient body straightening with dignity. I have ruled this council for 90 years. Before me, my predecessor was killed in a challenge that cost 3 million lives. I have always known that my death will trigger another such conflict. I have prepared for that inevitability my entire life. He walked slowly toward the human delegation, each step carrying the weight of his civilization's bloody history. Tell me truthfully, Ambassador Park, do your people sleep peacefully knowing that their leadership will change without violence? Do your children grow up without fear of succession wars? Do your institutions truly outlast the individuals who serve within them? Park met the ancient warrior's gaze with steady eyes. Yes, High Counselor, our citizens trust that tomorrow will function much like today, regardless of which individuals hold office. This stability allows us to make long-term plans, to invest in future generations, to build institutions that accumulate knowledge and wisdom over centuries. We are not constantly rebuilding from the ruins of the last transition. Stood silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried emotions that his species rarely displayed in public. My people believed such stability was impossible. We accepted violent succession as the natural order because we could imagine nothing else. Yet you humans have created something we considered a fantasy. He turned to address the full council. Representatives of the galactic community, I propose that we study human succession systems in detail. I propose that we consider whether our civilizations might learn from these methods. I propose that we imagine a future where our children do not die in wars fought over empty thrones. The vote that followed was unanimous. Every species present agreed to establish a special commission to study human governance systems. Over the following years, that commission would produce thousands of documents analyzing human constitutions, electoral systems, and institutional designs. Some species found it impossible to change. Their biological or cultural factors made peaceful succession genuinely impractical, but others began experimenting with human methods adapted to their own contexts. The empire, after 3 more civil wars and countless deaths, finally adopted a constitutional monarchy system that limited imperial power and established clear succession rules. The transition was painful and took centuries, but the violence eventually decreased. They discovered they could modify their consciousness, merging rituals to include multiple candidates who would compete through debate rather than destruction. Their transition periods shortened from decades to years, then to months. Even the proud began allowing aging warrior kings to retire with honor, training successors rather than waiting to be killed by them. The first leader to voluntarily surrender power was initially considered a coward. His civilization later recognized him as their greatest reformer. And through all of this, the humans continued their quiet revolutions every few years. Presidents served their terms and departed. Prime ministers lost elections and congratulated their successors. Kings and queens passed crowns to heirs in ceremonies rather than battlefields. Ambassador David Park eventually retired from diplomatic service. He wrote a book about his experiences introducing human governance concepts to alien civilizations. The title was simple: The Peaceful Transfer. President Maria completed her term exactly as scheduled. Governor James became president in a ceremony attended by representatives from across the galaxy. Many alien observers wept as they witnessed what they had been told was impossible. Shook hands with her successor, smiled at the cameras, and walked away from power. She lived another 30 years, founding her conservation organization and advising 4 more presidents. When she finally died peacefully in her sleep, the world mourned a beloved former leader rather than fighting over her empty throne. The humans had achieved something remarkable not through superior technology or military might, but through social innovation. They had solved a problem that had plagued intelligent species for millions of years across thousands of worlds. And they had done it so thoroughly that they barely noticed how extraordinary it was. To them, peaceful succession was simply normal. It was the way things should be. To the rest of the galaxy, it was proof that humans were perhaps the strangest and most wonderful species to ever reach the stars. The message spread across civilizations near and far. Humanity had conquered the oldest enemy of organized society. They had tamed the chaos of power transfer. They had proven that tomorrow could be better than today, and that progress need not be written in blood. Succession planning completed, civilization secured, the future protected. This was the human way.